crazy mother.
The overwhelming darkness of mono black control strikes once again because a lot of cards have come down in price, so we're going to revisit it in its latest and greatest glory. This is a budget modern deck running in at $45 or 16 ticks if you are playing on MTGO, and if you stick around to the second half of the video, there is an upgrade section where you can make this deck even better. Jumping straight into our removal section. Our first two cards are going to be Cast Down and Go for the Throat. They are strictly creature removal. They do have some conditions, so be mindful depending on what decks you're playing against in Modern specifically. Our next two cards are going to be Defile and Sudden Edict. Again, creature removal, but a little bit different flavor. Defile gives a creature -1/-1 for each swamp you control, so it is really good for getting rid of creatures that have indestructible. And Sudden Edict makes target player sacrifice a creature so we can get rid of stuff that maybe has hexproof or that we generally wouldn't be able to deal with. And our last strictly creature removal card is Ritual of Soot, which is destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less. It is essentially a board wipe, though it isn't as effective as some other board wipes out there, but it is generally getting the job done for us 99% of the time. Our next two cards are Gatekeeper of Malakir and Murderous Rider. They are creatures that also get rid of creatures. Gatekeeper of Malakir can make our opponent sacrifice a creature, and Murderous Rider can be cast as Swift End instead, which destroys target creature or planeswalker. You lose 2 life. This is super relevant in Modern because getting rid of planeswalkers is a really important thing. So much so that I'm dedicating an entire little section to cards that deal with planeswalkers and deal with creatures. We have March of the Wretched Sorrow and Bloodchief's Thirst. Both of these cards can target planeswalkers or creatures, and March of the Wretched Sorrow can gain us life, which is very handy. Also, it is a neat little card because we can discard black cards out of our hand to up its damage cost, which is going to be kind of relevant when we're dealing with bigger planeswalkers. The next section we're moving into is Hand Disruption. We have Duress, Inquisition of Kozilek, and Kitesail Freebooter. Being able to look at your opponent's hand, know what they have, and remove key things is always super important for a control deck, specifically one like ours. Additionally, Kitesail is also a great little evasion flyer that can get in and deal a little bit of damage to our opponent. Speaking of creatures, we do have some that are strictly win condition based creatures. We have Vampire Nighthawk and Gurmag Angler. Vampire Nighthawk, flying, death touch, lifelink, what's not to love, and Gurmag Angler we're running one of because if we get to the mid to late game, we can always just delve a bunch of cards out of our graveyard to play a big fat 5/5, which, you know, can be a relatively good win condition. Finally, the last 3 cards we have that are not lands, we have the value section. We have Cling to Dust, Dreaded Presence, and Invoke Despair. Now, all these cards are a little bit different. Cling to Dust allows us to exile a card from a graveyard. If it was a creature, we gain life. Otherwise, we draw a card. So this can be used to get rid of targets that our opponent have that they're trying to get back from their graveyard, or we can use it to gain life, draw cards. It also has Escape, which means we can exile 5 other cards from our graveyard and then cast it from our graveyard. Dreaded Presence, on top of being a 3/3 creature, whenever we play a swamp, we may choose one of the following. Either draw a card and we lose 1 life, so again, card advantage is handy, or it deals 2 damage to any target and we gain 2 life. So pinging your opponent's face, pinging creatures, drawing cards, it does a lot of different things. Very handy, very good once you get into the late game where you need to push your opponent past the edge of life. And the last card, and probably my favorite card to play in this entire deck, is Invoke Despair, which is target opponent sacrifices a creature. If they cannot, they lose 2 life, and you draw a card. Repeat this process for an enchantment and a planeswalker. So it essentially punishes your opponent by getting rid of their stuff, and it gives you cards. Usually when you play this, you're going to be drawing 1 or 2 cards, and your opponent loses a bunch of life. So it is, I don't know, I love this card. It's really fun to play because your opponent just all of a sudden has to do this like, oh god, what am I gonna do kind of thing, which is, yeah, you get it. Okay, moving into lands though. Let's talk about lands. We have Field of Ruin, Blast Zone, and Swamp. Field of Ruin destroys a non-basic land. We're running this over Ghost Quarter because we don't want to be down on lands. Blast Zone allows us to blow up a whole bunch of stuff with the same converted mana cost. This could be good for wiping our opponent of artifacts or creatures and a variety of other stuff. You'll find a good way of using this. And then Swamps because we're a mono black deck, so why not play Swamps, you know? It makes sense. Okay, let's move into the sideboard now. Again, with all sideboards, please tailor this to your local meta. This is just a suggestion of what you can play in the sideboard. We have Feed the Swarm, and Ritual of Soot for some more creature removal, Ratchet Bomb to blow up a bunch of stuff, usually enchantments, Nile Spellbomb to blow up graveyards, Damping Sphere to deal with Tron and combo decks, Pithing Needle to deal with decks that use specific things, usually Planeswalkers, Duress and Lost Legacy to get rid of more stuff in hands or specific cards throughout a deck, and lastly, Knight of Dusk's Shadow to make it so our opponents can't gain life. At this point though, if you're still watching the video, I welcome you to subscribe to the channel, turn on that bell notification so you don't miss any content, or join the Discord so you can be part of the conversation. Let's jump into the upgrade section though. First, we want to be putting in Damnation, Infernal Grasp, and Fatal Push. These are just better removal spells. We're going to be taking out Ritual of Soot, Cast Down, and Go for the Throat in place of these. Again, with Ritual of Soot and Damnation, you want to be doing the sideboard. One goes in the sideboard, one goes in the main deck. Next, we have Thoughtseize, which is just a substantially better hand removal spell. You want to be putting 4 of these in and taking out 4 Duress. Additionally, you want to move 2 of the Inquisition of Kozilek to the sideboard, so you have 4 Thoughtseize and 2 Inquisition of Kozilek in the main deck. Then we have Liliana of the Veil, a very sexy planeswalker that makes every single mono black deck substantially better. I was only running 2 in the testing I was doing, and I was taking out Sudden Edict and Kitesail Freebooter just to fill in these. You might want to try out 3 of her, but I think 2 is probably fine. And the final upgrade is a small little sideboard upgrade, which is that Necromentia is better than Lost Legacy. You might actually want to even play it in the main deck because it allows you to remove a bunch of stuff from your opponent, and it doesn't give them card advantage, which is the downside of Lost Legacy. And that, my friends, is the entire deck tech. Thank you for watching. My name is Adrian. This has been Giant Monster Games, and if you don't know, voting on what the next deck is going to be happens on my channel in the community section. So go check it out so you can be part of the conversation on what we're going to make next.